Hi, I'm Tom Jones, and welcome to another free art lesson. I have a special one for you today. I want to talk a little bit about how you may want to consider approaching painting either brick buildings or stone buildings. One of the mistakes I think that folks can make when they're starting out painting is that they may think that if they're doing a brick building, as an example, they need to show every single brick, or they need to show every single stone in the stone building. I would suggest to you that you may want to just suggest a few bricks or suggest a few stones in the side of the building, and quite frankly, it will have more power. There's a famous artist who had said one time that if it looks like a stone building, stop. If it looks like a brick building, stop. What he was meaning was that people are very intelligent. Suggesting a few bricks in the building or suggesting a few stones in the building is all you need. You don't need to show every brick or every stone, and you don't need a sign pointing to it. People are intelligent. They will figure that out. I'm going to show you how I would approach this. I'm going to take some color, and I'm going to put some color down on this particular building that I've sketched in here, and I hope you can see this sketch because I've got a building over here. So I'm going to take and just lay in some color. Now you'll notice that I'm keeping it very light, meaning I'm keeping the value or the tone very light in this building. I'm not getting too heavy-handed using, let's say, a medium value or dark value. I want to start with a light value first. So all I'm going to do is just suggest a little bit of color here. And you'll notice also that I'm not covering all of the white. Look what I've done here. I've left some area of white in this particular area of the building. Then what I'll do is I'll dry this particular building with my hair dryer, and then I'll come back and I'll suggest how we can put in the look of some stones in the stone building without having to paint every single stone. I'm going to take and let this dry for a moment. I want to jump over and show you on the right what I've already done. You'll notice in here again, I put down a light value of color, and I used a variety of color. I've used a little bit of my lemon yellow, I've used a little bit of my yellow ochre, and I used just a touch of burnt sienna. Now when I say I use those colors, I didn't throw them all into the crock pot and stir it up, okay? Or mix it all up in my palette. I put down a few brush strokes of the yellow, cleaned out my brush, went and grabbed a little bit of the yellow ochre. In another area, laid in a couple of brush strokes of yellow ochre. And then likewise with the burnt sienna, cleaned out my brush, put in a couple of brush strokes of the burnt sienna. It gives you a little variety rather than being all one color, which can be boring. So you'll notice I did the same thing here. I have a color change going on in the foundation color in the building. Then what I do is I came in and I simply take my brush and pick up some dark colors. I'm going to do a couple here for you. Then we'll dry that and show you how I did it on this particular side. Oh, I'll take a little bit of my burnt sienna, a little bit of my ultramarine blue deep. Let me make sure I've got my colors nice and clean over here because we don't want to work with muddy color. So I'm going to come back in, mix up a little bit of my burnt sienna, a touch of my ultramarine blue deep, and then we'll throw in addition to that, we'll throw in a little bit of my quinacridone rose, which is sort of like a permanent magenta color, rose color that you can use. I've got a nice rich dark color. Now I can come in and suggest just a few areas of where this particular stone is. See how I've done that? Again, you don't need to show every particular stone in the building. Again, they're all different size shapes as well. Larger shapes, mid-size shapes, smaller shapes, and so forth. Because as you know, in a stone building, you're going to have various different shapes. A little shadow under the eave up here, and that suggests that there's a roof edge here. I'll take a little bit of my color, and I'll come up and I'll put in, oh, maybe a little bit of a stovepipe up here to give a little more look of realism to the top of the roof. Okay? So just a couple of suggestions. Now what I want to do is I want to take a moment and dry this area, and I'm going to show you exactly how I started this particular area in this case. So let me take a moment, dry this, come right back, and then we're going to go ahead and show you how we finish it. Hi, welcome back. Now this is completely dry. I just dried it, and you can tell that it's dry by using the back of your hand. If the area is room temperature or warm, then it's dry. I would suggest to you that you make sure it's dry, because otherwise, if I start putting another color in here, it's just going to run into wet color and it's going to make a mess. So you have to make sure it's dry. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a 1/2 inch brush, just a 1/2 inch flat brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to suggest some stones by just adding in a look of a darker color. In this case, I'm using, again, my quinacridone rose. I'm using a little bit of my ultramarine blue deep, and I'm using a little bit of my burnt sienna. It gives me a nice, rich, sort of mahogany color. You can use any color you want. You could even use greens if you want. But I'm simply showing you that this is how I would do it. Now, what I want to do is I want to come in and take just a moment here. I'm going to take just a little bit of my ultramarine, or my yellow ochre, and I'll just make another suggestion of another color. Now, you'll notice this particular stone is a different color than this one here, okay? Now, so I'm going to just suggest just a few of these particular stones in the building, not all of them. And I would suggest that you also start maybe at the edge of the building rather than in the middle of the building. So what you're doing is you're putting this color everywhere on the side of the building, but you're only suggesting just a few of these particular stones. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of my burnt sienna, and get just a little bit darker. And I'll show you what I want to do here. I'm going to come in now, and I'm just going to suggest some of the cracks in the edge of the block. See how I've done that? Just a few here and there, like so. And again, you'll notice the different size shapes. They're not all the same. They're not uniform. So you want just a little bit of area that has a smaller area of block, maybe a larger area of block. And don't be afraid to leave some of that white, because that will help give you a little more variety and the look of realism in your particular rocks. So let me take just a little water on my brush. We'll extend this particular rock out just a little farther. But see how interesting it starts to look now. Look at the difference in the various color, but also, as important, look at the difference in the values. Some are lighter values, some are darker value. So all of that is important. This is sort of a thing that you'll want to practice. I would suggest to you that what you do is do this particular exercise several times until you feel comfortable with it. Okay? Have fun with it, as an example. Don't think that the first time you try it, it's going to necessarily turn out perfect. Remember, practice is important. Now notice how I've shown an interesting building here without showing with all the blocks in this particular building. Now I'm going to do one other thing for you. I'm going to come up here at the top area just to show you how I finished out a little bit of the shadow under my eave. So I just came in and used the same colors I'm using in my stone down here. Just a mixture of those three colors that I mentioned to you earlier. The ultramarine blue deep, quinacridone rose, and a little bit of the burnt sienna. And then what I'll do is just water on my brush. I'll soften, just take a moment and soften part of that shadow that's under the eave. Now you may suggest to yourself, or you may say to yourself, gee, shouldn't that shadow be straight? Well, not necessarily. An abstract shape for that shadow will make it more interesting for the viewer than a static shape, which is a straight line. So see how much fun you can have with these stone buildings. Practice this, and you'll do really well at this particular exercise. That concludes this particular exercise. I hope you found this valuable, and whether it's a stone building such as this or a brick building, use the same idea. Go ahead and do an underpainting on the side of the building with a lighter value. Dry it, and then come in, and then on top of that use a darker value or darker color and create the look of stones, different shapes, different values, different colors. You'll have a very interesting stone building. I hope you've enjoyed this, and don't forget, we're here at the Art of the Carolinas. This is an annual event every November at Jerry's here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have some of the finest art teachers from around the world coming here. In addition to that, we have students from all over the world coming here. It's a grand time. We have a big trade show. We have all kinds of workshops on any skill level that you wish, on any medium that you wish. It's a fun time. This is our 10th anniversary in doing this. I hope you'll join us next year for this. Thank you very much.